ADUs in Colorado are booming. More properties than ever are eligible right now for additional structures in Colorado. Let's talk a little bit about an ADU, or an additional dwelling unit, sometimes called a mother-in-law. So recent legislation has increased density all over Colorado. So a lot of limiting restrictions across Colorado's Front Range, specifically the Denver and Boulder areas. I know there's a lot of restrictions up in Summit County as well, but again, especially across the Colorado Front Range, density has been an issue. It's really simple: supply and demand. If there's limited supply and high demand, prices go up. If we have more structures, more livable space, more rental units can come online, more multi-generational living opportunities. Let's talk a little bit about adding an ADU in Colorado. First off, let's talk a little bit about the simple and immediate benefits of an additional dwelling unit, or ADU, again, or mother-in-law. I'm going to say ADU throughout this video a couple times. So the formal term, an additional dwelling unit, which is an additional structure on your property. We can even consider a finished basement with a private residence in ADU. We can talk a little bit more about that in maybe a different video about rental regulations and what those things look like. But simply put, more livable square footage, additional beds and baths, is going to increase property values. Second, rental income. So short-term, medium-term, long-term rentals, different price points, different strategies. Something we can talk further in a different video about the rental market. But that additional monthly income to help offset your mortgage or maybe the cost of your remodel is a great option to consider an ADU on your property. So we've got rental income, we've got additional square footage, and then let's not forget about multi-generational living, which we've seen a huge increase in the last decade of multiple generations living together. In some cultures, it's a standard practice. I have some friends, and I don't want to mess it up, but I believe it's in some Asian and some Indian cultures. Once you hit like 30 years old, your parents move in. I don't know if it's 30 or 40 or when you have your first kid. Again, I'm not an expert on the different cultures. I just know from my experience with having friends and colleagues from other cultures that this is a pretty standard practice that they have brought over to the United States. And I think it's admirable. I think it's an awesome practice and tradition, and it's another reason to consider an additional dwelling unit on your property. So we can finish out detached garages. We can build garages with an ADU above them. We can just build a standalone structure in your backyard if you have enough space. And of course, building, planning, and zoning departments allow it. Our experience in both real estate and construction are going to be able to help guide you on what is permissible in your specific lot. Simply reach out to myself or Jamie. We know where to go. We can find this out pretty quickly for you. So we started a little bit discussing different types, right? So we can simply add a private entrance into a basement, finish out a basement. We can finish out an existing attached or detached garage. We can build a completely separate structure on your property, which can serve as just that mother-in-law, or we can build a garage with a mother-in-law above it. So those are kind of the basic types of additional dwelling units that we can build and have experience building in the past. Adding an entrance into the basement, finishing a basement, finishing a garage, attached or detached, adding a solo mother-in-law suite detached structure, or we can do a 2-story garage with mother-in-law above. So those are different types of ADUs that are all going to come with varying costs, right? So finishing on an existing basement is probably going to be your lowest cost option. Now, it's not inexpensive to add a staircase, egress windows, and things like that for the basement finish, but it's going to be less expensive than building a completely detached structure. Now we go 1-story versus 2-story. So we talk about a mother-in-law that's just a separate living unit on your existing property, or we do a garage with a unit above it. Obviously 2 stories, more engineering, more construction. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, probably the most expensive option that we're discussing here today. Finishing a basement, because you're going to be so close and connected to a lot of your utilities, you're going to typically get the best bang for your buck. More finished square footage in the main structure is going to really help with resale value as well as objective desirability. Secondly, finishing an attached garage. Again, you're going to be closer to utilities. Now, do we want to delete a garage? I've seen homes where they have had a 2-car garage and they turned one stall into an additional dwelling unit or mother-in-law suite. Sometimes there's a connection between the main house and that. Sometimes it's just its own complete separate entrance and it's completely separated. It depends on what your specific use is. Multi-generational living, probably going to want to have grandma have access to see the grandkids real easy without having to go outside. For doing short-term rentals, Airbnb, medium-term rentals, medium-term rentals or long-term rentals, might want to have just a completely separate entrance to your additional dwelling unit. Now, as we continue to go up in the scale of cost, a completely separate garage that you finish, depending what type of utilities are run to it. Are we going to have to run a sewer line to it? Is there water running to it or not? Again, all things that JROC can help you with. Again, whether it's construction and adding that stuff, or in real estate and understanding the resale value and the best ROI for you when adding those items. Last and not least is building a new garage from scratch or building a garage with a mother-in-law suite or an apartment above it. Obviously, this is going to be the most expensive option. It's going to be the most labor intensive, the most engineering, the most design requirements, the most research for what is acceptable and not acceptable. Sometimes they have to be attached. Sometimes it's okay for them to not be attached to the main structure. And then there's always going to be size requirements. Reach out to us for a design consult or a preliminary understanding of what is possible on your specific lot in your city and your county. Discussing what is possible on your lot, like I said, there are some compliance pitfalls. We cannot underestimate the importance of site evaluation. So setbacks, which means how far your structures can be from property lines. Easements, the utility provider is going to need access uninhibited to electrical, city sewer, city water. These are different in the mountains, different in larger lots, different in rural versus urban areas. We want to make sure we're conscious of where our septic tank is. If we're in a more rural area and we don't have city utilities, we want to make sure our well is performing enough to service additional occupants. Again, really, really important things to consider that can easily be overlooked. We can get ahead of our skis on that. And we don't want to spend a lot of time and money if we realize it's not feasible for your property to take on additional inhabitants, whether it's multi-generational living or a rental idea. That being said, we want to be conscious of setbacks, where we can put our building in proportion to the property lines. We want to be conscious of building in zoning codes, whether it needs to be attached or detached. Is it legal to do so or not? In some cities and counties, if you're actually having a mother-in-law live in the mother-in-law suite or the ADU, you can build and do pretty much whatever you like because you have an injury or a terminal illness or you have new grandbabies. The cities and county building departments in some areas are going to be more lenient if you can prove that you have a reason to have family move in and help. If you're buying it or building it simply for rental, some cities will just tell you hard pass, some municipalities. So there's a lot of pitfalls that can be avoided with the right experience and knowledge that JROC has to guide you through a process if you're considering an additional dwelling unit on your property. Don't hesitate to reach out again to myself or Jamie if you found this information useful. A lot of this stuff is applicable not just to Colorado Front Range, not even just to the state of Colorado, but a lot of these things are pretty common regardless of where you live. So don't hesitate to share this information with somebody that is not necessarily in Colorado where we're currently based out of. Till next time, thanks for checking out JROC's YouTube channel. Remember, JROC Properties for real estate buying, selling, and investing, JROC Construction to help you build your dream space. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.